It begins with a whisper of an idea, soft and persistent, barely audible above the hum of everyday life. Somewhere, in the stillness of a softly lit study, a single page turns in a well-worn notebook. A lamp glows gently beside a simple desk, casting long golden lines across its surface. Outside, the evening has settled in, blanketing the world in hushed tones of navy and silver. Inside, a mind wanders, wondering what might be built if the pieces all aligned, if one simply began, patiently, quietly, and with purpose. There is something soothing in the image of a dream forming in silence. It begins in calmness, in curiosity, in tinkering, in solitary focus. It begins in a garage with uneven shelves. It begins with books and boxes and a steady hum of hope. Tonight's journey is a gentle unfolding of one such dream, and the quiet thinker behind it, Jeff Bezos, and the story of Amazon. Welcome to Sleepy Journeys, the podcast designed to lull you into a peaceful slumber with soothing stories through time, places, and ideas. Whether you're winding down after a long day or simply looking for a peaceful escape, you're in the right place. My name's Jack, and I'm so happy to have you here with me. Each night on Sleepy Journeys, we set off together on gentle adventures designed to soothe your mind and ease you into rest. You'll find journeys through history, comforting fairy tales, myths and folklore, the wonders of science, fascinating inventions, inspiring famous figures, music history, and even calm explorations around the world. No matter where your curiosity takes you, there's a dreamy, Sleepy Journeys show for you. Tonight, we're going to embark on a gentle journey through Jeff Bezos and the story of Amazon, a slow and thoughtful story about imagination, patience, and the power of quiet determination. From childhood tinkering to philosophical reflections, we'll trace a path that gently unfolds with calm discoveries and steady progress, always guided by a deep belief in long-term thinking. And just before we fully drift off, if you're enjoying Sleepy Journeys, go ahead and tap follow or subscribe on whatever platform you're joining me on. That way, you won't miss any of our upcoming sleepy adventures. And let me know in the comments where in the world you're listening from and what time it is there. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us. Now, take a deep breath and let's begin. In the warm stretches of southern Texas, where the air carries the scent of sunlit fields and the wide skies stretch endlessly overhead, a boy named Jeffrey Preston Bezos was born. It was January of 1964, and in the gentle hush of that new year, something quietly extraordinary had entered the world, surrounded by family and the calm heartbeat of a new beginning. Jeff's early life began in Albuquerque, New Mexico, where the landscape rolled in desert tones and the stars shone vividly each night. But it was in Houston, Texas, and later in Miami, Florida, that much of his childhood would unfold. He was a curious child, not just interested in the way things worked, but deeply, quietly determined to understand why they worked that way. The kind of child who might take apart a toy just to see the hidden wheels and springs inside, then patiently try to put it back together again. His grandfather, Lawrence Preston Gies, had a profound influence on him. Lawrence was a quiet, capable man, a retired director at the U.S. Atomic Energy Commission. On the family ranch in Cotulla, Texas, Jeff spent many summers by his grandfather's side. It was a slow, spacious place, far from the bustle of cities and distractions. There, surrounded by open skies and the soft murmur of cattle in the fields, young Jeff learned how to fix windmills, care for livestock, and repair machinery. These were tasks that required patience, observation, and the ability to problem-solve gently, qualities that would remain with him for life. It was also a place where the mind could wander. Long afternoons, the warmth of the sun on his face, and the slow rhythm of nature. In those moments, seeds of future thought began to form about machines, about structure, about building something from the ground up. Back at home, Jeff's interest in science and technology only deepened. He turned the family garage into a laboratory of sorts, filled with quiet tinkering and soft electrical hums. He once rigged an alarm system to keep his younger siblings out of his room, a simple yet effective invention, full of early signs of his inventive spirit. He loved space and science fiction, often reading for hours, wrapped in the stillness that only deep curiosity can bring. As the years passed and the family eventually moved to Miami, Jeff continued to grow in both body and mind. He was slender, thoughtful, often seen reading or lost in thought. There was something focused about him, a calm, internal drive that revealed itself in his quiet consistency. In school, he was known for being bright and determined, but never boastful. Always watching, always learning. In the quiet corners of classrooms and the sunlit corners of his room, Jeff dreamed of building, constructing systems, exploring ideas, imagining futures that didn't yet exist. And in those early years, amid the swaying grasses of Texas and the humid breezes of Florida, a boy quietly laid the foundation for something remarkable, something that would one day stretch across the globe, yet still trace its origins back to a garage, a ranch, and a patient, wandering mind. In the soft rhythm of suburban life, where school bells mark the passing hours and library shelves offer quiet companionship, Jeff Bezos's early academic years unfolded with a gentle determination. Each day brought a new opportunity to explore, to question, and to follow curiosity wherever it wandered. From an early age, learning was not a task for Jeff. It was a landscape to roam, a garden of ideas waiting to be discovered. In elementary school, Jeff stood out for the clarity of his focus. He was the kind of student who sat up straight, pencil poised, eyes bright with attention. His teachers noticed a calm intensity in him, a young mind eager to absorb not just facts, but the structure behind them. Math came naturally, with its precise language and dependable rules. Science was a joy, a subject that revealed the hidden mechanisms behind the world's mysteries. He thrived in classrooms where questions were encouraged and exploration was welcome. At home, his appetite for knowledge found even more room to grow. Books were his faithful companions, stacked on desks, tucked under arms, and left open beside his bed. He read about space, engineering, and the future, stories that extended beyond the present moment into realms where imagination and logic met. Science fiction wasn't just entertainment for Jeff. It was inspiration. Writers like Isaac Asimov and Arthur C. Clarke painted worlds where innovation changed the human experience, themes that quietly planted themselves in his growing mind. By the time he reached high school in Miami, Jeff's drive to learn had fully bloomed. He enrolled in the Miami Palmetto Senior High School, where he dove into advanced classes and sought out extra challenges. He joined the science club and later the student science training program at the University of Florida, where he conducted real research, a remarkable experience for a teenager. These early steps weren't just academic exercises. They were steady strides toward understanding systems, analyzing complexity, and solving meaningful problems. He was awarded the Silver Knight Award, one of the most prestigious honors for high school students in South Florida, recognizing both academic excellence and community service. Even in his teenage years, Jeff carried a quiet sense of purpose. He wasn't drawn to fleeting trends or shallow pursuits. His focus was long-term, his interests deeply rooted. Outside of class, he worked on projects that reflected his inventive spirit. One of his early creations was a small summer camp for younger kids that he called the Dream Institute. The curriculum was self-designed, blending reading, science, and quiet reflection. It was a gentle, imaginative endeavor, far removed from the stereotypical teenage summer. It showed that even then, Jeff was drawn to the idea of building, creating environments, shaping systems, and guiding others through thoughtful structure. Teachers and classmates alike described him as focused and thoughtful. He had a calming presence, not prone to drama or distraction. He was quietly laying the groundwork for something meaningful. Each homework assignment, each science fair, each late-night study session was a brick in the foundation he was patiently constructing. As high school came to an end, Jeff had set his sights on something vast, the stars, perhaps, or the evolving world of technology. He had applied to Princeton University, drawn by its rigorous engineering program. And as he prepared to leave Miami behind, there was no noise or fanfare. Just a young man, quietly driven, deeply curious, and ready to step into the next chapter of his journey with the same calm, determined spirit that had carried him this far. Nestled among gently rolling hills and ivy-covered stone, Princeton University holds a calm, scholarly air, a place where minds are invited to wander with focus and questions are asked with quiet reverence. When Jeff Bezos arrived there in the early 1980s, he brought with him the same quiet intensity that had carried him through his earlier years. He followed the steady pull of curiosity, and in those ivy-lined classrooms, he found fertile ground to continue exploring the elegant order of the universe. He began his studies with thoughts of physics, drawn, as ever, to the vastness of space and the clean language of mathematics. For a time, he immersed himself in the precise, almost poetic nature of physical law. He respected its clarity, its beauty. In time, he discovered something even more resonant with his way of thinking: computer science and electrical engineering. These fields offered complexity and structure, but also the opportunity to build, to create things from the invisible scaffolding of logic and code. Bezos switched his major, a quiet but decisive move, and found himself deeply engaged in a world of algorithms, software systems, and hardware design. He studied with careful attention, always seeking to understand the why beneath the surface. Princeton's classrooms and labs became spaces of focus, places where the soft hum of computers and the scratch of pens on paper told the story of young thinkers solving quiet puzzles. His professors noted his precision in thought process. Jeff wasn't just trying to get things right. He wanted to understand them completely. He graduated summa cum laude, Phi Beta Kappa, and as valedictorian of his department. Yet these honors were simply markers along a quiet, persistent path of disciplined thought. During his college years, Jeff also developed a reputation for thoughtful leadership. He was chosen to help organize and run the Princeton chapter of the Students for the Exploration and Development of Space, and SEDS, a student group devoted to future space exploration. It was a telling detail. Even as he immersed himself in the logic of circuits and software, he never lost his fascination with the cosmos, with building toward a future beyond the bounds of Earth. Outside the classroom, his demeanor was calm, often described as introspective and methodical. He had a dry sense of humor and a steady, composed presence. His peers saw someone deeply engaged with his work, yet unassuming. The kind of person who would rather build something meaningful than talk about it. As graduation neared, Bezos quietly surveyed his options. He could continue in academia, dive into technology, or follow a different kind of path altogether. He chose to enter the world of finance and technology on Wall Street, where quantitative analysis and systems thinking were in high demand. It might have seemed like a departure, but for Jeff, it was just another landscape, another place where complexity could be studied, problems quietly solved, and long-term visions patiently nurtured. And so, with diploma in hand and the calm determination of someone who understood the value of steady thinking, Jeff stepped out of Princeton's peaceful courtyards and into a new, noisier world, one that would test, refine, and eventually inspire the next chapter of his thoughtful journey. The quiet corridors of Princeton gave way to a different kind of rhythm, the soft click of polished shoes on marble floors, the gentle murmur of conversations over spreadsheets and market reports, and the low hum of data terminals glowing in softly lit financial offices. Jeff Bezos had arrived on Wall Street with a deep interest in systems, structure, and long-term strategy. His first role was at a telecommunications startup called Fitel. It was a place where finance met technology, an intersection that intrigued Jeff deeply. The company worked on building a network for international trading, connecting buyers and sellers across borders using the early tools of digital finance. Jeff's role was part coding, part strategic planning, and part exploration. He immersed himself in the mechanics of global commerce, watching how data, decisions, and trust moved invisibly through networks. It was fascinating, the kind of complexity he quietly enjoyed deciphering. Soon, he moved on to Bankers Trust, a firm known for its structured financial products. There, he worked on developing software to help manage institutional investments, building tools that supported billions of dollars in financial movement. Each system he worked on was a puzzle to solve, to bring clarity and order to large-scale financial environments. Jeff's work was thoughtful and precise, and it earned the quiet respect of his colleagues. It was his next position at a hedge fund called D.E. Shaw & Co. That would mark a pivotal chapter. Shaw was not a typical Wall Street firm. It was data-driven, deeply analytical, and run by people who valued intellectual rigor over status or showmanship. It was, in many ways, a sanctuary for thinkers, a place where careful, curious minds could thrive. Jeff joined in 1990 and quickly rose through the ranks. He was only in his late 20s, but his blend of technical skill and strategic thinking stood out. He worked on building mathematical models and evaluating market opportunities. But beyond the models and metrics, something deeper was forming. He was watching how industries evolved, how markets responded to innovation, and how new technologies were beginning to quietly reshape the business world. It was during this time that the internet began to rise, slowly at first, with just a handful of users and simple pages. But its potential was immense. Jeff saw it. He noticed the numbers, tracked the growth, and sensed a shift on the horizon. The internet was expanding at over 2,000% annually. That fact, quietly sitting among the sea of data he reviewed each day, stood out to him like a whisper becoming clearer. He didn't rush to act. Instead, he studied, reflected, and considered. The idea began to form: an online marketplace, beginning with books. Books were ideal, standardized, easy to ship, and beloved by readers everywhere. It was a modest idea, yet filled with possibility. And in the steady rhythm of his day, Jeff began quietly planning. It was the summer of 1994, and the air was warm with the promise of change. Somewhere between the firm grip of Wall Street and the vast openness of a quiet future, Jeff Bezos and his wife, Mackenzie, packed their belongings into a modest car. With the hum of tires on pavement and a laptop balanced on his knees, Jeff began to map the future. The road ahead was long, winding gently through mountains and plains, with soft skies unfolding above. The drive itself became a space to think, to plan, to wonder. As the car moved steadily from New York to Seattle, ideas flowed as naturally as the changing scenery. Jeff, notebook in hand, began sketching out what would become the blueprint of a company built on structure, on patience, on customer care, and on long-term thinking. They stayed in small hotels along the way, eating quiet meals and talking softly about possibility. The goal was simple at first: an online bookstore. Something clean, focused, and useful. Books were a natural starting point. They were easy to catalog, shipped without damage, and offered endless variety. A perfect entry into the online marketplace. In the stillness of that journey, Jeff also began shaping something deeper: the values that would guide his work. He spoke often about building for the long term, about staying flexible while committing fully. He imagined a company that would start small, yet be built for scale, its foundation strong enough to carry weight far beyond its beginnings. These were quiet convictions, rooted in thoughtfulness. Seattle was chosen by design. The city offered access to a skilled tech workforce and proximity to Ingram, a major book distributor. More than that, it was a place known for invention and a calm sense of industriousness. It was a place to begin quietly, without unnecessary noise. in a region that understood the value of patience and innovation. By the time the car rolled into Seattle, the plan had taken shape. Jeff had left a secure, prestigious role. He had stepped away from comfort for a steady build. He called the company Cadabra at first, a quiet nod to abracadabra, the idea of magic through words. But soon, he changed it to something broader, more enduring. He chose the name Amazon, after the world's largest river, a name that spoke softly of scale, of depth, of endless flow. The drive itself would later be remembered as the beginning of a grand venture. But in truth, it was a moment of quiet inception, a time of reflection, gentle planning, and the firm planting of a single idea. The hum of the car, the rolling landscapes, the faint tapping of keys on a laptop screen, these were the sounds of something beginning. The garage was unassuming, a quiet, sun-dappled space nestled behind a modest home in Bellevue, Washington. Just a cement floor, a few tables, tangled cords, and a vision quietly taking shape. It was here, in this still, practical place, that Amazon began, with the gentle rhythms of focused work. Jeff Bezos set up a small desk, assembled a few computers, and began the careful process of building. The garage, with its cool morning air and soft echoes, became a workshop of dreams. Every line of code was typed with precision. Every decision was weighed with patience. The company's first server was an old machine repurposed for testing. It sat humming gently beside stacks of books, its blinking lights offering a quiet sense of momentum. He was joined by a few early team members, people who, like Jeff, believed in building something meaningful from the ground up. They sat at mismatched desks, sipping coffee, reviewing spreadsheets, and writing software late into the night. The work was not glamorous, but it was deeply purposeful. They knew they were laying foundations, brick by virtual brick. The first version of Amazon's website was simple. A clean page with a search bar, a few categories, and the promise of books delivered right to your door. When the first order came in, a textbook on fluid dynamics, it was received with quiet excitement. It had begun. The packaging area was a simple table in the garage. Jeff and his team wrapped each book by hand, sealing boxes with care, applying shipping labels, and gently stacking parcels for pickup. There was no warehouse or distribution center. Just human hands, steady effort, and a deep belief in the system they were creating. Jeff would often drive to the post office himself, delivering the day's orders with quiet satisfaction. Each package was more than a product, it was a promise kept. Customers received their books, often surprised at the speed and simplicity of it all. And with each delivery, Amazon grew, one reader at a time. The guiding principle was clear from the start. Focus relentlessly on the customer. Jeff printed the phrase, customer obsession, on early documents and spoke about it often. The goal wasn't to sell the most books, but to create the best experience. If that meant writing new code, redesigning the website, or staying late to solve a small problem, they did it, calmly, persistently, and without compromise. Neighbors passed by, often unaware of what was unfolding just behind those garage doors. To them, it was just another house on a quiet street. But inside, a quiet revolution was underway. Through it all, Jeff remained steady, focused not on quick wins, but on building something that would last. Amazon, still in its infancy, was already reflecting the careful thought, the patient strategy, and the quiet brilliance of the man who had imagined it. One keystroke, one book, one thoughtful decision at a time. In the gentle hum of Amazon's early success, there was no rush to expand. Growth came quietly, thoughtfully, like a tree adding new branches one season at a time. Books remained the heart of the company, their familiar weight and bound pages reminding the team of their humble beginnings. But in time, Jeff Bezos began to look further, from a calm conviction that the same principles used to sell books could support something much larger. Jeff's vision was never confined to a single product. From the very beginning, he had imagined Amazon as the everything store, a quiet, steady presence where customers could find whatever they needed, delivered simply and reliably. But such an idea couldn't be rushed. It had to be built with care, one thoughtful decision, one customer-focused expansion at a time. The first steps beyond books were careful and deliberate. Music CDs were added to the catalog, followed by DVDs. These items, like books, were easy to store, easy to ship, and offered a wide range of choice. Amazon's systems adapted smoothly, and customers responded with curiosity and trust. Soon, the company quietly introduced categories like electronics, toys, and home goods, each one a new chapter in a growing story. There were no sudden shifts or flashy announcements. Instead, there were long hours of testing, of refining the website, of designing systems that could scale without sacrificing the personal touch. Jeff believed deeply in infrastructure, the hidden systems that kept everything running smoothly behind the scenes. He often spoke about the plumbing of the business, the software, logistics, and processes that allowed Amazon to grow without losing its focus on quality and reliability. He was methodical. Each new category was evaluated for its ability to improve the customer experience. Could Amazon simplify this purchase? Could it offer better selection, better prices, or faster delivery? If the answer was yes, the expansion moved. In 2000, Amazon introduced its marketplace, allowing third-party sellers to list their products on the site. This was a quiet, transformative step. It opened the doors to countless new items, allowing customers to find nearly anything they could imagine, all in one place. Jeff's decision to allow other sellers, even competitors, onto the platform might have seemed counterintuitive. But it wasn't about competition. It was about offering the best possible experience. If someone else had what the customer wanted, Amazon would make sure they could find it. With each passing year, the catalog grew. Furniture, clothing, groceries, office supplies, all gently added, all folded into the company's expanding framework. And as the offerings increased, so too did the behind-the-scenes systems that made it all work. Warehouses, now called fulfillment centers, were built with quiet efficiency, designed to store, pick, pack, and ship with astonishing accuracy and care. Even as the company scaled, Jeff insisted on preserving the spirit of day one, a philosophy rooted in remaining agile, humble, and ever focused on the customer. He believed that every day should be treated as if it were the first, full of energy, curiosity, and possibility. It was a mindset that protected the company from complacency, guiding each decision with the same quiet care that had marked its earliest days. Amazon was growing, but it hadn't lost its stillness. It hadn't lost the focus that made each package feel personal, each page feel clean and useful, each interaction feel considered. The company's expansion was steady, thoughtful, purposeful. Just like the man who had started it, in a garage filled with books and gentle ambition. There is something deeply comforting about a vision that doesn't rush, one that unfolds gradually, like morning light easing across a quiet landscape. Jeff Bezos carried such a vision. It was steady, rooted in patience and quiet conviction, a belief that true impact is built over decades, not quarters. From the earliest days of Amazon, Jeff spoke often of long-term thinking. To him, success was measured in consistency, in trust, in the quiet satisfaction of building something that endures. He often reminded his team that decisions should be made not for the next month, but for the next 10 years and beyond. At the heart of this philosophy was a simple idea: to be customer-obsessed, not competitor-focused. Instead of watching what others were doing, Jeff encouraged his team to listen deeply to customers. What did they want? What frustrated them? What small improvements could bring them joy? These questions guided every choice, from website design to shipping logistics. The answers came through observation, testing, and quiet adaptation. Jeff also believed in the value of experimentation. Amazon tried many things, some that worked beautifully, others that quietly faded away. There was no shame in failure. Each attempt was part of a thoughtful process, part of a larger effort to learn and refine. He spoke of planting seeds, small ideas that, with care and time, might grow into something extraordinary. And if a seed didn't take root, it was gently set aside, its lesson preserved. One of the guiding metaphors Jeff used was the concept of the flywheel. A flywheel is a heavy disc that builds momentum slowly, with consistent effort. At first, it moves almost imperceptibly. But with each small push, it gains speed until it spins smoothly on its own, driven by its own gathered force. Amazon's growth was like that, quiet, persistent, and grounded in systems that strengthened over time. Fulfillment centers, logistics networks, web services, all added with care, all part of a larger, slowly accelerating engine. He also encouraged his team to embrace what he called high-velocity decision-making. This didn't mean being hasty. It meant understanding which choices required deep deliberation and which could be made quickly and revisited later. It was a mindset designed to keep the company nimble, even as it grew. Jeff's letters to shareholders became thoughtful reflections on this philosophy. Written with clarity and calm, they explain the principles guiding Amazon's decisions, always returning to themes of patience, innovation, and customer-centric thinking. In a world often focused on immediate results, his tone was refreshingly steady, a quiet voice reminding readers of the value of long-term clarity. Throughout Amazon's growth, he resisted short-term pressures, even when others doubted or criticized. He remained focused, always building, always thinking ahead. He saw the company as a platform for invention. And so, the vision continued to expand, from retail to cloud computing, from publishing to artificial intelligence, always driven by the same careful philosophy. In this vision, there was comfort, a sense that not every step needed to be fast, not every answer needed to be immediate. That in a world of noise, there was still space for quiet, methodical progress. And as Amazon grew, the echo of that original belief, that lasting things are built slowly and thoughtfully, continued to guide its every move. As Amazon's quiet rhythm of growth continued, new ideas began to take form. Some ideas were born from listening carefully to customer needs. Others emerged from gently reimagining what convenience, access, and innovation could feel like. Among these were 3 offerings that would, over time, reshape how millions experienced shopping, reading, and technology itself: Amazon Prime, the Kindle, and Amazon Web Services. Prime began with a simple, thoughtful question: what would make the customer experience smoother, more dependable, more delightful? Shipping was a major part of that experience, not just the speed of it, but the ease, the predictability, the comfort of knowing that your package would arrive on time without extra cost or complication. And so, in 2005, Amazon quietly introduced Prime, a subscription service that offered unlimited 2-day shipping for a flat annual fee. At first, the concept seemed almost too generous. But Jeff saw beyond the surface. He knew that trust and convenience would bring customers back again and again. Prime was more than a shipping perk. It was an invitation to relax, to browse, to shop without worry. Over time, it expanded to include streaming video, music, and more, a bundled experience that offered value and simplicity. Customers responded with loyalty, drawn to the ease and reliability of the service. Around the same time, Jeff turned his attention to books, not just selling them, but transforming the way people read them. He imagined a device that could hold thousands of books, that would be as easy to carry as a paperback, and that would bring reading into the digital age without sacrificing the stillness of the experience. The result was the Kindle. Released in 2007, the Kindle was designed with simplicity and care. It had no distracting colors or lights, just a soft, ink-like screen that mimicked the look of paper. It allowed readers to carry entire libraries with them, to discover new titles instantly, and to read wherever they were, all without losing the intimacy of a quiet page. The Kindle was a gentle evolution, blending technology with tradition in a way that felt seamless. While these innovations brought comfort to customers, another Amazon initiative was quietly reshaping how the digital world itself functioned. In 2006, Amazon introduced Amazon Web Services, a suite of cloud computing tools that allowed other companies to store data, run applications, and manage digital infrastructure with ease. It began modestly, offering storage and processing power. But behind the scenes, it was quietly revolutionary. Jeff had seen that Amazon's own infrastructure, the systems that powered its vast operations, could be offered to others as a service. AWS allowed startups, universities, governments, and large companies to focus on building, while Amazon handled the underlying complexity. It was invisible, stable, and dependable, a cloud that held up much of the modern internet, all managed with the same quiet precision that defined Amazon's every move. Each of these innovations, Prime, Kindle, and AWS, began softly, with thoughtful design and careful planning. They emerged into the world like gently placed stones in a flowing stream, solid, useful, and lasting. At the center of it all was a consistent thread, a belief in making things better, more accessible, and more thoughtful, one gentle step at a time. Leadership in Jeff Bezos's world was about clarity, consistency, and a quiet dedication to principles that guided every decision. From the earliest days of Amazon, Jeff nurtured a leadership style rooted in thoughtfulness, a steady hand, calmly steering through complexity. He believed that great leaders were those who created systems, frameworks within which thoughtful choices could thrive. To that end, Amazon's culture developed a set of carefully considered principles. They were lived, referred to, and quietly embedded into the daily rhythm of work. One of the most enduring was the idea of customer obsession. For Jeff, the customer was the reason for every line of code, every new idea, every improvement. Decisions were weighed against the quiet question: will this make things better for the person we serve? If not, it waited. If yes, it moved forward. Another principle was invent and simplify. Innovation, in Jeff's mind, required insight, followed by simplification, a gentle stripping away of the unnecessary to reveal the essential. Amazon's best ideas were often the quietest, services that worked so seamlessly, they disappeared into the background, leaving only ease and satisfaction behind. There was also a deep respect for long-term thinking. Jeff encouraged teams to take their time when it mattered. Some projects might take years before reaching fruition, and that was welcomed. The goal was durability. Teams were asked to think as owners, to care deeply about outcomes, to weigh trade-offs carefully, and to treat each project as a craft. Bias for action was another guiding thread. In a large organization, it's easy to become paralyzed by analysis. Jeff wanted his teams to move with courage. Most decisions, he believed, were reversible. It was better to try, to learn, to adjust, than to wait for absolute certainty. He also spoke often about being right a lot. This didn't mean stubbornness. It meant listening carefully, seeking diverse perspectives, and having the humility to change course when new information emerged. The best leaders, he believed, were those who paired conviction with open-mindedness, who held their ideas gently, ready to adjust them as needed. Meetings at Amazon often began with silent reading. Instead of presentations, teams wrote 6-page memos, carefully crafted documents that laid out a problem, the thinking behind it, and the proposed solution. Everyone would sit quietly, reading together. It was a ritual of reflection, giving space for deep thought before discussion began. Jeff's style was not always conventional, but it was consistent. He preferred logic to flair, systems to slogans. And in doing so, he cultivated a culture where innovation felt natural, where challenges were met with calm analysis, and where even the most ambitious goals were approached with quiet determination. His leadership was about building people, building processes, building trust. And as Amazon grew, this quiet style of guidance proved to be one of its most enduring strengths. The passage of time is rarely marked by noise. Often, it unfolds gently, like the soft turning of a page or the quiet shifting of light across a wall. In February of 2021, Jeff Bezos made a calm announcement, one that reflected his consistent, thoughtful rhythm. After more than a quarter-century leading Amazon, he would step down from his role as CEO. He chose his successor carefully, Andy Jassy, a longtime Amazonian who had led Amazon Web Services. Jeff was stepping into a different role, becoming executive chair of Amazon's board. He spoke of focus, the desire to dedicate time and energy to other passions, to ideas that had patiently waited while Amazon took shape. Among those passions was Blue Origin, a space exploration company Jeff had founded 2 decades earlier, in the year 2000. It had long been a quiet dream of his, to help humanity reach beyond Earth, with a thoughtful, deliberate path towards spacefaring life. His childhood fascination with rockets and stars had matured into a mission to make space travel more accessible, more sustainable, and more purposeful. Blue Origin's motto, Gradatim Ferociter, translated to step by step, ferociously. The company's progress was slow, methodical, safety-focused. Jeff spoke often of building the infrastructure for the future, reusable rockets, lunar landers, and space habitats designed for long-term habitation. It was a vision rooted in sustainability, in curiosity, and in the same kind of foundational thinking that had built Amazon. Beyond space, Jeff also turned his attention to philanthropy. The Bezos Earth Fund, established with a quiet $10 billion commitment, was created to combat climate change and support the planet's long-term health. The approach was patient and wide-reaching, focused on science, restoration, and innovation. It was about laying groundwork, supporting the work of others, and gently nudging the world toward resilience. He also began to support education and social equity through the Day One Fund, aimed at helping homeless families and building high-quality preschools in underserved communities. These efforts, like so much of Jeff's work, reflected a belief in systems that with the right support and structure, lasting change could grow over time. Though his days as Amazon's CEO had come to a close, Jeff's influence remained. He continued to think in long timelines, to act with careful consideration, and to invest in projects that looked far beyond the horizon. His curiosity was undimmed. His energy, though now spread across more ventures, still pulsed with the quiet force of someone who saw the world not just as it was, but as it could be. The moment of transition was a gentle reorientation. One chapter had come to a close, with a quiet nod, a grateful look back, and a steady step forward toward the stars, toward the earth, and toward the patient unfolding of new dreams. In the end, Jeff Bezos' story is one of systems, of patience, and of quiet disruption, the kind that happens in the slow, steady movement of deeply rooted ideas. His legacy is woven into the background of daily life, gently reshaping how we shop, how we read, how we build and how we imagine the future. What began in a garage with a few shelves and a gentle hum of servers grew into a company that touches nearly every part of the modern economy. Yet the principles that guided it remained surprisingly consistent. Every step, from books to cloud computing, from two-day shipping to space travel, reflected a belief in building with care, in thinking long-term, and in solving problems at their foundation. Jeff often spoke of Amazon as being in day one, a mindset that refused to settle into comfort or routine. To him, day two meant stagnation, followed by irrelevance, decline, and eventual death. So he worked constantly to keep Amazon agile, curious, and deeply connected to the people it served. It was discipline, a gentle insistence on always asking, always improving, always reaching. He disrupted by simplifying and by persisting. In doing so, he redefined what it means to lead in the modern age. He showed that innovation can be quiet. That vision doesn't need to come with applause. That the most meaningful changes often begin in the patient construction of a better process, a better question, a better future. The tools Jeff built, from the Kindle to Amazon Web Services, were invitations. Invitations to read more, to build more, to dream more boldly. They earned trust. And in their quiet usefulness, they became part of the fabric of everyday life. Beyond technology, his legacy includes a deeper lesson about imagination. Imagination grounded in structure, vision carried out with discipline, and a belief that the future, however vast, can be shaped gently by the actions of today. And so, the story of Jeff Bezos doesn't end with a single achievement. It flows on, like the river he named his company after, broad, persistent, ever-moving. It reminds us that greatness often begins in quiet rooms, with open notebooks and the soft turning of ideas into reality. A legacy, in the end, is not what one shouts. It's what one leaves behind in silence, systems that work, ideas that endure, and paths that invite others to follow, gently, thoughtfully, and with purpose. As we return to where we began, the evening has grown even quieter. The soft light from the desk lamp still glows, casting gentle shadows across the surface where ideas once stirred. Outside the windows, night settles in fully, blanketing the world in peace. The journey we've taken, through childhood curiosity, methodical building, and far-reaching dreams, now comes to rest. Jeff Bezos' story, though marked by global transformation, began in stillness. It began with quiet questions, with a love for reading, with a mind drawn towards systems and solutions. And though the world around him grew louder, more complex, and more expansive, his approach remained grounded in simplicity and focus. A legacy shaped by the soft, consistent turning of thoughtful wheels. We think again of that garage in Seattle, once filled with cardboard boxes and blinking servers. We remember the careful folding of tape on a package, the quiet buzz of a computer fan, the hush of ideas taking root. And we return to the steady rhythm of patience, of imagining a distant goal and taking gentle steps toward it day by day. There is comfort in this kind of thinking, in knowing that lasting things are not rushed, that behind every innovation, every system that quietly works without asking for attention, there was someone who believed in building with care. Jeff Bezos offered us that reminder, that imagination does not always need to shout, that progress can unfold softly, and that purpose, when held with dedication, will find its way forward. Now, the desk is quiet. The pages of the notebook are filled. The stars outside twinkle softly in their distant orbits, and the river of ideas, like the Amazon itself, continues to flow, calmly and endlessly forward. Thank you for joining me on tonight's journey. I hope it brought you a little peace, a little wonder, and a little closer to rest. Until next time, sweet dreams.